Welcome to another Ember Weekend. I'm Jonathan Jackson.
And I'm Chase McCarthy.
And together we are Ember Weekend, and we have a lot of stuff to cover. I want to say we missed last week, but we're back, and there's a lot of stuff that's happened. We're going to try to hit as many things as we can and move through at a pretty good clip, so hope you enjoy this. I think this is going to be released on Friday the 13th, so it's a spooky special. Yeah,
it's good. It's really nice when the title just happens in the very beginning. You don't have to think of it later.
Yeah. So, anyways, let's dive right in. But first, let's listen to a word from our sponsors.
Hello, I'm Corey.
And I'm Matt.
Matt and I started our consulting company 201 Created 5 years ago. We've been passionate about Ember and its community since we started and are proud to be able to sponsor Ember Weekend.
Our clients have included Fortune 50 companies and Y Combinator startups. If your team needs Ember training or advice, or wants to learn how to make open source work for you, visit us at www.201-created.com or follow us on Twitter at 201-TWO_OH_ONE.
Thanks for listening and enjoy the podcast.
All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is actually a blog post from me that I wrote about Ember Macro Benchmark, which is a benchmarking suite, kind of a conglomeration of two different libraries that will let you perform macro benchmarks across your application. And it kind of like normalizes the network layer so you can get much more reliable distributions, and it has some cool reporting tools. It's a really, really fantastic project. And I think that there's a couple things that are notable. One, it's not necessarily Ember specific. So this is something you can share with your friends in other communities, because I think this is really valuable. It's the idea that you can make small changes and actually measure their impact on the overall performance of your application. So once again, we're moving at a quick clip today. So I just want to mention that it's there. It's on Medium. We're going to link to it. Definitely think you should check it out. The libraries are really cool. I believe Chris Selden wrote Ember Macro Benchmark and the underlying libraries as well out at LinkedIn. So it's some really, really cool stuff. Very, very powerful to give you some insight into your code. It was used in the 2.14 Ember.js blog post to not only describe the performance improvements from the previous versions of Ember to that version of Ember, but they actually used it to help do performance tuning. So it wasn't like reporting. It was actually informative to the design of new code. Definitely check it out. I think it's worth the read. And yeah, let me know what you think. Obviously, if you leave a comment or concern, I would love to discuss it more.
The next thing we want to mention real quick is that you may have seen this if you're subscribed to Ember Weekly. If you're not, go ahead and subscribe. That used to be run...
Definitely subscribe.
That used to be run by Owain Williams, and now it's run by Ryan Tablata and Eric Brin. It's been revamped a little bit. Like if you look at it, the emails look a little different. There's like the webpage looks a little different.
Yeah, it's been a huge resource for the community. So Owain Williams did an awesome job. So kudos to him. Definitely reach out and show him some love, because it really has been it's been around since, I think we were featured in our first episode was featured in the 70th something episode or Ember Weekly. So it's been around for quite some time. So that was probably 2014 then it started. So it's a tremendous and colossal effort. So subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and reach out to Owain, say thanks, and reach out to Ryan and Eric and see if you can help, and thank them for doing it too. It's a really cool service. I think it really does help having that curated list of items to look at on a weekly basis. So I'm really excited to see that it's still got some energy and it's still moving forward, and this is really cool stuff. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Road to 3.0 Ember.js blog post. And, this is one of those things where we're not exactly breaking news. I feel like anything that goes onto the Ember.js blog is usually on Twitter and all over the place. But I think it's definitely worth giving a pretty close read. There's some really cool things there, especially around browser support. I think that's the main discussion. And there's also a corollary. Corollary? Is that the right word, Chase?
I have no idea. I don't know what the next word you're going to say.
True. So. So there's an RFC that discusses specifically the browser changes that they want to do. They want to basically drop IE9 and IE10, as well as Phantom.js, although that's not really the Phantom is not too much of a surprise. And that'll let them do a lot of really cool things. So the RFC will link to as well, where it talks more specifically about what insulating code they can remove and what code they can start using without transpiling polyfills and stuff. Basically remove a lot of dead weight and what specifically they want to use that isn't supported in IE9 and IE10. That is supported in IE11. So there's a bunch of really cool things in this blog post. It's very, very detailed, talking about all of the different API removals and deprecations going into 3. The coolest thing that I took away from this blog post is that because this is mostly about trimming the fat, so to speak, and kind of removing and deprecating as we transition to 3, and mainly the browser support as well. Once we go to 3, we're going to see that feature work is still able to be done because it's mostly about removing like things that have been deprecated and known to be on the chopping block for quite some time. Feature work can continue. So it's kind of an exciting thing. I think after 1.13 to 2, I think the lessons were learned. I think we saw kind of like a little dry run of the kind of transition that they want to see in the 2.8 version with the new Glimmer drop-in replacement, where it was just, hey, you just get this for free, and we're going to try to make sure that you don't really have to think about it too much. So I think that learning from that 1.13 thing, we're going to see a really smooth transition to 3. I mean, fingers crossed, obviously, knock on wood, whatever. But I'm hopeful for that. And to see all the cool features that we're going to be talking about in a minute, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and kind of tying into that is this other tweet that came out recently that had a lot of retweets, which is the Ember status board. Yehuda tweeted this, and at the time it had maybe four or five things in it. Since then, they've added a couple more. It kind of all ties into the road to 3.0. At the top of the list is things like the JavaScript module API, which we're going to talk about, and how that's basically already shipped now at 2.15. And then further down, you get into the more long running things. And then down at the bottom, there was something I thought that was really interesting, which they called code splitting, which seems to have a little bit to do with kind of like the lazy engines approach of like splitting your code up by routes. So definitely look into that. Each one of these items in here is expandable, and you can read a little bit more about it. So it's definitely a good way to keep track of like all the things coming down the pipe with Ember and like where we're headed. Yeah, so there's things like the module unification, which is this really, really long running thing. It's different than the JavaScript module stuff that just got dropped. Module unification is like structuring your app like kind of like the next gen pods. So I guess it's gonna be more like Glimmer. That's on here, and you can use this because it's updated constantly. You can use this to kind of keep up to date. Like, hey, what's the status of that thing? And you don't have to go, find each RFC individually. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's cool. I think this is super worth a bookmark. Super worth? Yeah, it's good. It's worth bookmarking. There's some really cool stuff. It's one of those things where frequently people will come up and ask, hey, what's the latest and greatest Ember stuff? And I think this would be a place where you can say, hey, like if you want to know what's like on the verge and what's being worked on actively, go check this out, and you'll be able to kind of click around. And I think it directs to RFCs and things. So yeah, you'll be able to get some high-level things to point at and look at and explore if you're excited about that sort of thing. So I think it's definitely cool. It's something that I think, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like obvious in hindsight. Like it's cool to have this all in one place. It's really cool. I'm very excited about it. So definitely worth a bookmark.
So sort of kind of the next track to all of this 3.0 goodness is the next two releases, 2.15 and 2.16 beta. 2.15, I think we talked about it when it was in beta because I'm pretty sure we mentioned some of the router changes that came in this. There's like two parts to the router changes. I'm not going to go into the whole API, but basically you get some of this stuff now, and then I think 2.16 lands the other part of it. The other part in 2.15, the major part is they changed the way mount works for engines, so you can now pass a model. That's pretty cool. So 2.15 wasn't a huge release, but then 2.16 kind of like had only like one major item, but it was pretty big, and that's the JavaScript module API that we just talked about.
Yeah, in the JavaScript module API, I think it's something we've mentioned many times. I even think maybe a couple weeks ago we mentioned it, where we were just talking about like kind of what it is and where it sits and how it's kind of like before you were almost encouraged or maybe non-encouraged to use the Ember CLI shims library all over your code base, but a lot of people just ended up importing Ember from Ember, and then you destructure all the things you want off the Ember global. And now that's not the way that it's going to work. The way that it works now is you import using the JavaScript module API, which is outlined in place now as of 2.16. I believe even new Ember apps will be generated in the 2.16 betas with the new JavaScript module stuff. So if you want to see like an example of how it might look, you can start using the generators and see how things actually play out. There's also a code mod that would allow you to pretty easily take an older code base and bring it up to the new module API. So definitely check these things out. I want to say, are there some specific things that we need to talk about? Read the JavaScript modules, Chase?
No, I mean, I just wanted to mention the overall like approach to this is not just to have everything nested under Ember, which I like. So rather than getting like jQuery from Ember.dollar, you just do import dollar from jQuery. I always thought that was great about like add-ons like, I think it's QUnit that does this, like Ember QUnit. When you import QUnit, you don't say import QUnit from Ember QUnit. And so it basically like, it's like kind of stubbing out as if, jQuery or QUnit had like just full Ember support. I really like that approach of just saying like, no, it's just $ from jQuery, because you're not going to have like 3 jQuery libraries. And so that's one thing, is that all of the things that don't necessarily have to do with Ember have been like shifted off of the Ember namespace. And then the things that are Ember related are like under at Ember / the thing. And they only go like three levels deep, I think, is the max. They specifically talked about how you don't want like this massive chain of like 10 directories deep. But yeah, it looks like it's fully implemented. I like the code mod. The -- fix option in ESLint is going to make it really easy to translate this. And I believe it can also translate at the same time from doing like const, get equals Ember, like destructuring something off of Ember, along with you mixing in things from the Ember CLI shems, because there were some things that were not in shems that you had to still use off of the Ember object.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So definitely check this out. I think, honestly, at this point, reading the blog post, the 2.15 release, 2.16 beta blog post, that'll get you kind of primed. But then you might also want to read the RFC around the JavaScript module API for more details. But I think it's something that it's going to facilitate a lot of really cool stuff down the road. I'm really excited about it, and I definitely think it'll start making things better. Very cool stuff.
All right, that's all we had for this week. Super packed. There's a lot of stuff going on. Make sure you tune in next week. As always, you can find us on Twitter at Ember Weekend. So we'll be back next week.
And one more thing, I just wanted to say special thanks to our editor, as always, Jill North, for doing all the editing work here. And special thanks this week to Tobias Binek and Ricardo Mendez, Lox, for helping us out with some of the details around the upcoming Ember.js stuff. So that was really nice of them. And I think that's it. And we'll be back next week.